At a hotel in Arlington, Virginia. It shows the explosion that followed the crash of American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, but the video does not show the airplane. The video's existence was disclosed in 2002. A hotel manager says it was confiscated by the FBI. It was just publicly released as the result of a lawsuit. At a hotel in Arlington, Virginia. It shows the explosion that followed the crash of American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, but the video does not show the airplane. The video's existence was disclosed in 2002. A hotel manager says it was confiscated by the FBI. It was just publicly released as the result of a lawsuit.
Judge me cause I see things clear. Like Malcolm by any means with my gun in my palm. Don't look to the sky, no. I don't see only God can judge me cause I see things clear. Like Malcolm by any means with my gun in my palm. Don't look to the sky, no.
Peace. Welcome to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Ture Allah.
Peace. Jakil Naj Allah.
Peace, Jarul Allah.
And we would like to welcome you back to another broadcast of the Knowledge Yourself radio show on November the 10th, what we call Knowledge at a Cipher. And in our alphabet, it refers to justice because that's what we're going to talk about today. Actually, we're going to talk about the injustice. So to begin with, remember each show is brought to you by Global Position Solutions. You can contact them at Global P, as in Paul, Solutions.net. And if you would like to look at our archives or actually view us live, which some of you are today, you can log into knowledgeofselfradio.weebly, that's spelled WEEBLY.com. So today's show, our primary goal is to share knowledge with all of you, our listeners or viewers, about how we can decipher the language that's being used by politicians, the military, and law enforcement. And the reason why this information is useful is because many times when we watch the news or we may talk to police officers or we're in a situation where we have to appear in court, sometimes we're exposed to a language that we really can't understand. So that's basically the primary goal of today's show. And we're going to share several different pieces of knowledge which will help us better understand the language that's being spoken today, which a lot of times is being used to cover up the injustices that are being committed by the same people who are using this language. So let's begin with a quote. It's by a man by the name of Jimmy Breslin, who apparently coined the term called smoke and mirrors. And he was a journalist primarily in the city of New York. So he says, All political power is primarily an illusion. Mirrors and blue smoke, beautiful blue smoke rolling over the surface of highly polished mirrors. If somebody tells you how to look, there can be seen in the smoke great, magnificent shapes, castles, and kingdoms, and maybe they can be yours. The ability to create the illusion of power, to use mirrors and blue smoke, is one found in unusual people. Jimmy Breslin. So I would like to kind of pass that around to my brothers here. How do you all see the idea of smoke and mirrors wherever it's being used, and how has that sort of panned out in your life and your observations and experiences thus far?
Well, to me, it's like the one dude who, you come across, say you're a child and, you're out playing or whatever, and there's one dude who acts tougher than he really is, A lot of the children are scared of this guy, but, you in your heart know that, wait a minute, why is he overdoing it so much? Why has he got his chest always puffed out? Why is he running around slapping people for no reason? The weakest people for no reason, and that's because he's trying to project, through smoke and mirrors, an image of strength that's not really actual fact. So I think with this quote, it's just really dealing with, how the government and any ruling power in history is they used imagery of power, not necessarily the actual force. It's just the imagery, So they might take one or two people and make an example out of those people, and then the rest of the people will fall in line based on them feeling like, oh, there's no way that I can, survive unless I bow down. So
no doubt. Yeah, and to add on, you want to talk about smoke and mirrors. The biggest one, which we'll probably talk about a little bit, is the media and television. And if you leave it, for instance, like if you watch the show Cops, you would never think that anyone got away from police. Which we know you can ask people right down the street. They've been running from cops and getting away for a while, so it is possible. But due to that illusion on TV, you really think like, okay, man, once those lights are on, you're not getting away, and it's a wrap. So I'd definitely say smoke and mirrors is tricky, just like magicians. I never liked those dudes.
Right. Well, I mean, I think both of you just kind of touched on it, which is basically, we have a serious beef with the media, which is why we approach what we do with more what we would consider justice and truth. So when we talk about smoke and mirrors, basically it's a cover-up. Okay, and something may be broadcasted on the news or printed in the paper, especially if it's broadcasted through the news live. We all know that there have been situations in history where the federal government or CIA, FBI, they'll call the news station and tell them you cannot play that again, because in some way it threatens national security. So
Fox News, hey, the Twin Towers are going to fall. If you look behind my shoulder, the towers fall. The camera pans to the side, the towers are still there.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
Right. So I didn't know that. You see what I'm saying? But see, this is the type of analysis you get from brothers like Jaquil and Jarul about the idea of smoke and mirrors. Once you see me, now you see me, now you don't. Right. So that's really what we're going to get into today, and today's a relatively heavy show. So before we go any further, we're going to go ahead and get into today's current events. And I know we have Jarul leading the first discussion of our current events. Go ahead, brother.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna give a personal current event. Obviously my black woman's 5 months pregnant. And so we went to a prenatal appointment. What was it, on Thursday?
Okay.
So we went to Cedars-Sinai. We're gonna have a home birth, but we still go to Cedars just to get ultrasounds and those types of things done.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because what we did was we went and they did the echo. you know, the what you call it? It's like the high tech 3D
Oh,
ultrasound
okay.
that they can really zoom in and check to
Right.
see the organs and to see if everything, you know, looks as it should. So we did all of that, and I guess they came across a calcium deposit. You know, so
In the baby?
yeah, in the baby,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So what happened was, you know, they had the regular ultrasound technician doing her job, and then the doctor comes in after. So the doctor comes in, and immediately she was like, okay, well, there's a calcium deposit that we found in your baby's heart, and there's no other signs of any other issues in the baby, but there's this little calcium deposit. So there's this test that we have that newly came out through this new company or whatever that we recommend that you take. You know, it's only going to cost you this much.
Only.
You know what I mean? So basically, it was interesting because she came in like a salesperson, and that's immediately the feeling that I got. Like she was trying to sell us this product.
Right.
You know, she was like, "Well, you know, your insurance should cover some of it. Most of the people that get it done, it covers this much. You probably only have to come out of pocket this much." She didn't come in like a doctor and say, well, this is what it is. Here's the chances of this occurring.
Here's what could cause it, or here's how we can
none of
fix
that.
it. None of that.
No professional opinion. None of you know.
That company gave her the professional opinion.
Exactly. So, you know, obviously, you know, a woman in a defenseless state like that, it's going to put stress on her. So automatically my black woman got stressed out. I was striving just to get her to see that based on the way the woman came in, she was really trying to sell something to us. You know what I mean? But I just want to, you know, make people aware if you are, you know, attending your you know, westernized hospitals, you know, when you're dealing with pregnancy, be mindful of this. You know, they're going to try to push things on you and then prey on your you wanted the best for that baby as a means to get you to buy different products.
Right. Yeah, no, it's fear mongering.
Yeah.
Right. You know what I'm saying? Just the same way, you know, you come home and turn on the news and they'd be like, oh, it's a amber orange alert, or it's a fluorescent pink, or you know, whatever.
The terrorism,
terrorism
bar at the bottom of, you know,
whatever crazy thing that it was at for the day, and they would be like, oh no, I have to. So they kind of use that same kind of thing where they're like, okay, here, you should be afraid of this, but we have a solution for you. All you need to do is give us this much money.
So,
and it didn't even seem like she was offering you a solution, right? They're just going to give you that test just to see.
Yeah, I mean, the test doesn't. It's one of those things where.
I mean, what were they going to test for? We know that there's a calcium deposit. So
so they say that like 1.8% of babies who have that calcium deposit on their heart, like that, could equate to Down syndrome. So 1%, or one in 17,000 babies get that, right?
1 in 17,000.
Yeah. So
that's high rate, man.
You know. So she was saying, so she was saying if you get the test, it'll narrow it down a little bit more, so you can know precisely if the baby. You know what I mean? It's like.
So other than that, you have no scientific data to tell me about, you know, normally when it's about this size, the percent is roughly here, or the body will break down calcium as the body does naturally.
Right, and that's why me being a 5%er, as soon as I left, I got on my, you know, got into the research, and I researched the actual companies that, you know, provide the test, and one is called Aricia, OSA Diagnostics, and the other one is Integrated Genetics. So this goes back to the show where we built about how they have the ability to now use or to look at your DNA, determine what different things are on your DNA, and how those things will be, I guess, you know, activated into the child,
or not activated.
Exactly. Man. So.
That's my thing also, you know, because like you said, we did a show talking about that, and we know that within different vaccines that they have ways to give you delayed cancer or you know, autism and all these other kind of where things that are delayed and can be controlled and kind of predicted. Like, okay, you won't get it now, but 4 years later, after you've been eating this kind of crappy food and drinking all this fluoride, and once we give you this shot, that's going to activate all that stuff from back then, and now we can give you this whole other range of things to make money off of you until you finally die.
Yeah, so I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. If you're having a child, be mindful of what these doctors are advocating that you do. Because remember, at the end of the day, it's a business, and they're trying to get rich off your labor. So
read the inserts to those vaccines that they offer you.
And that was the thing that I'm glad you mentioned, the fact that you researched the companies, because since we're decoding language, we have to ask ourselves, that key word, company. So company is a group of people. So who are these people that are keeping company with each other to where they're trying to sell something to you and your earth?
Right. Who's outside of the company.
Right. For further diagnosis of something that has probably been going on for trillions of years, but just now we have these devices and instruments to kind of look a little bit deeper into the human body. So it's not being used to say anything positive, right? All these types of ways they're probing us, it's just a way for us to make some money off of you. There's a problem there. We can take care of that if you pay us this money.
And not even we can take care of that. We can look more into what the problem is, which we already told you what the problem is. But we can look farther into that problem just to tell you.
Right, and this also, got the wheel spinning. And, like we built about in the other show where they took, DNA, or they took genes from one woman and implanted into the ovaries of another woman. Who's to say that they're not taking all of these women who are obviously fertile, that DNA, and putting it in a database, and putting it in an area where they could utilize it later on for those women who would need it the most.
Right.
Wow. Man, thank you for sharing that, guys. It's very important. Please be aware, because if there's anything that we teach in this show, it's just for you to be more aware. So always do your research in any situation. I wanted to pass it over to Jaquil, because I know you have some burning information coming out of the news as of late.
Yeah, yes, sir. So I got one that's actually, kind of referencing our children. And so this comes out of nationalreport.net, and we know that when they've done things like DARE programs in the classrooms, that kids end up gravitating more towards those drugs because they never knew about them. We also know that when they start teaching kids about suicides, that suicide rates jump up among kids. When you teach them about sex amongst kids and pregnancy amongst kids, jump up in those areas. So now, what they're trying to do, which we built about on the previous show, they have a RFID mascot that's going to begin a nationwide tour to help children overcome the fear of being implanted with an RFID chip. Yeah. So again, you gotta begin to connect a couple of dots, right? They're telling kids that first of all, they're lowering the age rate of consent in which a child is able to give consent for something that they want to do without having to tell the parent. The kids are allowed to have abortions in some places without telling the parent. We request condoms without telling the parent.
The abortion pill.
You can get vaccinations without telling your parent. So as they give children more adult rights as a children's state, which the minds are obviously not developed enough and easily manipulated. You have to wonder when they do things like you're going to come home and your kid is going to tell you, "Hey, I decided to get injected with an RFID chip because I have that right, and my teacher said it was a good idea." So I kind of, how do you guys see that? I mean,
well, that's another positive, reason we should look into homeschooling.
I mean, when you look at the monies that are being used to fund things in public schools, you just ask yourself, so you have money to do those types of things or propose those types of things, but you don't have enough money to spread around for some of the most simple things that all schools are not allotted. enough
we get
books.
dictionaries and
dictionaries, desks, qualified teachers who have been trained in universities to teach in urban schools. But those types of things, man, it's like no one's alarmed by any of this, because people always want to cry about civil rights and human rights and your right to privacy, but no one's really visibly coming out and making noise about these things.
Right, no doubt.
So
like you said,
that's really surprising, man.
They have funding for these different things. All kids are coming home with a Chippy the RFD doll, a Chippy coloring book.
A Chippy?
That's his name. Chippy the RFD chip. It sounds, less terrifying.
Unbelievable.
You have Chippy with you all the time, no matter where you go. It's kind of, do you guys remember My Buddy? Chippy is like the My Buddy. You have him with you wherever you go. It's
unbelievable.
That's wild.
Well, I think we just need to keep our eyes open. That's the whole point. So as far as what I kind of skimmed, there's a report out there about a news reporter. Her name is Laura Logan, who's having to apologize for some misinformation broadcasted about the Benghazi attack last year. Basically, just in a nutshell, the information was received from someone who was, at the time, supposedly a reliable source. And just to bring you up to speed, that report, it actually led to a lot of the criticism that the Obama administration had gotten in regards to that particular incident, which was kind of aired out in the debate last year, where, he was being questioned about whether or not his intelligence acted on some specific information in regards to the Benghazi attack. And of course, you can go back and listen to the debate. But in a nutshell, it goes back to what we always advocate: knowledge, but more importantly, not taking things on face value. So it will be a really good, maybe, thing for you to do, activity for you to do, is just kind of look at this report, and you can see how this connects with what we're talking about today. The idea that certain information is broadcasted, and then no one really tries to investigate it any further. We just take it for what it is. Oh, it must be the truth. It's being broadcast on television, on the radio. Well, here we are now, having to go back and look at some information that was broadcasted that was actually rooted in an unreliable source. So this information that was broadcast came from an unreliable source. So you can check it out on CNN.com. Put in Laura Logan apologizes for 60 minutes. The rest of the title for 60 minutes. It's two different titles. Anyway, the title here is "We Were Wrong." CBS's Laura Logan apologizes for Benghazi report.
Wow. Okay.
So, really interesting.
Yeah.
Man.
Sounds interesting.
Jerome, did you have another one you want to hit him with?
Yes, sir.
All right.
So this comes from World TV, or WorldTruth.tv. And the headline is USDA forces Whole Foods to accept Monsanto.
Whole Foods is not going to accept Monsanto?
Exactly.
Wow.
So.
Well, if I remember correctly, didn't Whole Foods have a scandal in which they had some Monsanto products in their all-organic store that were not labeled as such?
Yeah. Yeah.
So now it's just kind of like, well, now we have to, and so here's the reason for it.
Yeah, so it's almost like Whole Foods is acting like they're being forced to, not like they're, really advocating for it.
Right.
So they're still trying to remain that organic people place type of situation, but at the same time now we're allowing the GMO to come in. So it's it's one of those things where we talk about politics. It's remaining in a certain political stance in the eyes of the people.
That was my question: is what position are they in which they can have something forced upon them? Because generally you can't force something on someone unless they're back to the wall or something, right?
Yeah,
There's some evidence on them.
right,
So.
right.
Man, nothing is safe.
Yeah,
brother.
so I'll read a little bit from it. In the wake of a 12-year battle to keep Monsanto's genetically engineered crops from contaminating the nation's 25,000 organic farms and ranches, America's organic consumers and producers are facing betrayal. A self-appointed cabal of the organic elite, spearheaded by Whole Foods Market, Organic Valley, and Stonefield Farm, has decided it's time to surrender to Monsanto. Top executives from these companies have publicly admitted that they no longer oppose the mass commercialization of GE crops, which is genetically modified crops, such as Monsanto's controversial Roundup Ready alfalfa, and are prepared to sit down and cut a deal for coexistence with Monsanto and USDA biotech cheerleader Tom Vilsack.
Man, we're making some big moves.
Making big moves.
Yeah, that's definitely destroying our food supply, but also destroying the whole concept of what food is, man. So we're basically being sold things that can't be classified as food.
You know, the way things are going, there's going to be a point in history where there's no naturally grown food.
So I have a current event that I just found beyond the another one I was going to have, but it piggybacks on what you're going with. These dudes have genetically engineered trees, which they are now going to grow, despite what scientists are saying about the trees, that they will cause damage to the environment. Burning the trees will cause climate control issues. And it's kind of like the movie The Lorax. I don't know if you guys ever seen it, but nothing's real in The Lorax, right? The trees are fake, everything is just fake. Food is fake. Oh man, it's insane. And again, this genetic modified food, these trees, although they know that they're bad, we don't know the full extent of how terrible these things are.
And that's the way that they can still get these things to be produced, because they never really take the time to do significant studies prior to releasing these things, and that's the only reason why they're allowed to do so, because the more information beforehand that gets released on how damaging these things are, the less apt the people are going to be to accepting these type of things in our existence. So it comes back to knowledge and deciphering, man.
Right.
Keep your eyes open, like Teray said. So
one thing I would like to find out is exactly how much these companies are making, by putting these foods out to the general public. I mean, I bet you it's a stunning number.
You got to think, Monsanto, who's obviously worked for the government before, is the makers of Agent Orange, right? Also, by the Obama administration, were given the sole right to feed Africa. After they've caused people in India to kill themselves at alarming numbers. It's insane. You give those same people the means to feed a whole continent, and now you're going to tell those same people to sell food in Whole Foods. Yeah, so at least in that, I guess they're going to be getting that food for free as a subsidy, and you got to pay for it.
Wow. One way or another, right?
At whole food prices.
Yeah. Through taxes and everything else that's done to fund these types of interesting experiments on people. Q&D, did you have another one, guy?
Yeah, I got an interesting one. So this one actually comes from Infowars.com, and it's a story by Paul Watson, and it's dealing with how local cops are switching patrol cars for big rigs. So, now if you go back in time a little bit,
who are they trying to catch?
If you go back in time, maybe 5 years or so ago, and I may be off on my timing, but if you go back a little bit, you'll see that they tried to do the whole see something, tell something with people in trucks, right? So like if you see someone texting or doing something illegal on the road, you as a trucker call it in and tell someone, and you'll be given a reward.
What?
So now right? So instead of doing that, because I'm sure a lot of truckers were probably like, yeah, that's BS.
Looking at ladies' legs, too busy doing that.
Now they're just like, well, we'll just cut them out altogether. We'll just start driving trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very unassuming. I ran into a highway patrolman who was driving a Dodge Charger. And so if you weren't paying attention, you would just think it was a normal Dodge Charger.
Mm-hmm.
Until you saw the lights on it. And so I
Right.
had a conversation with this guy. He was like, yeah, it's an awesome car. It's pretty fast. And what we like about it is no one knows that we're driving those yet.
Right.
So, we cruise up on people all the time who are doing all sorts of things
Mm-hmm.
and catch them in the act.
Right, and then they have several different types of highway patrol cars. One of them looks kind of like a old school milk truck. I don't know if any of you have seen those.
Right.
It literally looks like a wagon, and I'm sure many of you have seen it. If you've been on Interstate 10 out here in Southern California, you've probably seen it at least once.
Right.
But the one thing is, the fewer highway patrolmen we see, we do have to begin to ask ourselves, how are they surveying the freeways now? With the introduction of drones in the United States, you can bet when you don't see as many highway patrol cars that you're used to seeing, it's still being watched.
Right.
Right. So,
And that's funny that you talk
Man.
about that. So I've got another story
Yeah.
that's actually dealing with that same topic. U.S. airspace to crawl with 7,500 drones in the next 5 years.
that's an incredible amount of drones.
In addition to the ones that we already have flying
Right.
here.
And remember, they say that one drone can watch everyone in an entire city.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you need 7,500 drones for?
to watch
Everyone
everyone
on the planet.
3 or 4 times
Right,
from multiple different angles?
Yes.
Yeah, that's insane.
You have no privacy anymore, Americans.
Right.
So just keep that in mind. Maybe tell the women in your life to buy them some lead suits or something. I don't really
Right.
know, man.
Buy a lot of tinfoil and cover the inside of your houses.
Straight up,
And your
man.
head with tinfoil.
Yeah, just think about that, everyone. Think about your own privacy, man. Just the privacy that we take for granted, because they've definitely crossed the line.
Yeah, no doubt. Everything we talked about, from the children getting RFD chips stuck to them and being more susceptible to that. The reality is, and this is by their own words, is that they don't really care about the adults. It's not the adults that you ever try to get. It's the children, because when you get the kids used to a certain norm, right, then that becomes what's normal to them. And so the parents are going to die, right? It's the kids growing up who think that's normal. And then the next generation, you try something else that's a little bit outside of the norm. And then everyone just kind of gets used to it. I can't remember this guy's name, but basically he said, the reason, and this is one of those Illuminati dudes, and for lack of a better word, and he said the reason why we are able to be successful is because we use people's natural ability to adapt. So now when you think about that, and what we talked about on other shows, right, putting fluoride in the drinks, which kind of dumbs you down, makes you more docile, right? The huge push of homosexuality, not only by TV and media, but by our president. It's got the most homosexual people in office, more than Bush and Clinton combined. He even went to Africa to push the whole homosexual agenda, right? Which will potentially make people more docile and easier to control, right? And so then you're really setting the stage for people who are just going to be zombies.
Wow.
Easy manipulated, told to do whatever you want to do.
Man, what can I say, brother? Just keep building. Anyone else have something you want to share?
Okay.
I would like to thank y'all for sharing those events. Again, it's all brought to you by the Not Yourself Radio Show. The information is out there, but we also try to make sure we flip it to give you another side of anything that's coming out in the news. So when we come back, we're going to get into our show, and we'll see you in a moment. Peace.
Peace.
Sick.
Crazy.
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself Radio.
Peace, Yarullah.
And of course, as always, we want to get into the questions of today's show. We're basically teaching you how to decipher the language that is spoken by politicians, the military, and law enforcement. So let's just begin with the questions. Number one, how does government persuade people to believe that it will solve people's problems? Number two, how many people in government come from impoverished communities? We're going to answer that question right off the hip. How many politicians were once living like the common people? Number three, how many politicians are in the United States that are subjected to the same laws that they vote and pass? For example, Obamacare. Number four, how many politicians are Caucasians in the United States of America? A whole bunch of them, y'all. Number five, how much money is spent on military as opposed to what is spent on its citizens? And how much does one missile cost? I think there's a varying amount of prices for that one. I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to my brother, Shaquille, for the next few questions.
Number six. What are the tools government in any country uses to gain support for its efforts from the people? Right. 7. What are smoke and mirrors? 8. How does government use media to make the public think that wars are over when they are really not? 9. How do governments trick people into fighting wars they've been covertly fighting? 10. Who and what is the government? There you go. 11. What weapons are used to acquire and maintain the control of the citizens?
So 12. How do governments make people that tell the truth liars? 13. Why is the language used by the media a mystery to the general public? 14. What does religion and the seventh seal have to do with the government language?
Wow, 14 is a hot one. I definitely want to hear that. So now, just to give everyone a spin on today's discussion, it's important for us to share some typical definitions or just some typical terms that you would hear in the media, in your own research, and how these terms pop up not only in speeches but just in general discussions with people who are always on the pulse of criticizing politicians and also attempting to put a checks and balance in place. So like the guy here, he was referring you to InfoWars. That's a really good source that by all means, they will refer you to some terms that are used interchangeably in the media. And also by the critics of the media and politicians, the military and law enforcement. So the first term we want to share is smoke and mirrors. And it's defined as such, something that seems good but is not real or effective, and that is done especially to take attention away from something else that is embarrassing or unpleasant. So the examples here are the 9/11 bombings, the Sandy Hook shooting, and the Boston bombing. So why don't I just pass it over to my brother Shaquille to read the second term.
The second one is dog whistle politics. That was interesting. So that is a political message employing coded language that appears to mean one thing to the general population, but has an additional, different, or more specific resonance for a targeted subgroup. The phrase is only ever used as a what's that? Pejorative? Because of the inherently deceptive nature of the practice, and because the dog whistle message are frequently themselves distasteful. For example, by empathizing with racist or revolutionary attitudes, it is an anthology to dog whistlers, which was built in such a way that the high frequency whistle is heard by dogs, but is inaudible to humans. The term can be distinguished from code words used by hospital staff or other specialist workers. That dog whistling is specific to the political realm. and that messages referring to dog whistling has an understandable meaning for the general audience rather than an incomprehensible meaning.
Quite a lengthy definition.
Yeah.
What's the next one we hitting on with?
Newspeak. Basically, it's a speech or writing that uses words in a way that changes their meaning, especially to persuade people to think a certain way. And one example is pimping.
Right.
Basically, that's what it is. It's
right. And here we go. Doublethink. It's also known as reality control. So what should come to mind, especially with Newspeak and Doublethink, is 1984 by George Orwell. So if you haven't read that novel, you can read bits and pieces of it. Don't get soft and just look at the movie. You know what I'm saying? The movie's really good.
Okay.
But if you want to get into the specifics of this language, 1984 has an appendix in the back that defines all of these different words that in modern times, government officials, politicians, and so forth and so on, they're using these ideas because George Orwell saw them being applied by communist governments during the time that he was around, right, and when he wrote 1984. So, doublethink is reality control, the power to hold two completely contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accept both of them. An excellent example of doublethink in modern society is the war on drugs. If you ask people their opinion on alcohol prohibition in the 1920s, most people would agree that it was a complete failure. People agree that it only caused more crime and made gangsters rich and corrupt politicians, most importantly, didn't keep people from drinking. All right, so the idea of doublethink is that we're going to solve a problem that we've created. And we're going to look good in your eyes because even though we created this problem, we're going to use your sense of trust and security and confidence in us to make us think like we're the good guys when essentially we're the bad guys. We're the ones that created the problem for you. And we'll definitely tune in to what these brothers are sharing in regards to the war on drugs and the key players.
It's like that Killer Army, that Killer Army. There's like a skit on one of the Killer Army albums that says you're at war with an enemy that you can't see.
Right,
that's
true
what
indeed.
it seems like.
Can we see the enemy? That's the thing, man. I'll tell you this much: if we can't see them, we can hear them when they use this language because they are controlling what we're listening to and reading on a daily basis.
Right.
So, first heading of what we're going to discuss today is titled Politricks. And to quote Tragedy, Politricks makes me sick. Okay, you should check out Arrest the President. That's an old track, man. Check that out. So why don't we get into our discussion about Reagan and the war on drugs. So I do want to give this over to the guy Jeru so we can all kind of add on to this. How is the war on drugs led by Reagan, how was that what we would consider not only doublethink, but why is it just contradictory in its nature?
Well, we must understand that to declare war on drugs, that means like you're declaring war. You're declaring war on something that really isn't reasonable. Like, can you lock up drugs? Can you put drugs? Can you really murder a drug, or can you kill a drug, or can what I mean? Like the drugs are going to be there. So what they're really saying is we're declaring war on those who use drugs, sell drugs, and those type of things. And
we don't sell them for our companies.
Exactly. not the ones who are bringing the drugs there. Not the ones who are really directly connected with the government, but the ones who are falling victim to these drugs being brought into the area. Never did I ever hear them say there is no way to grow these types of drugs in the communities that these drugs are used in. So we need to figure out where these drugs are coming from and then really
Never ever.
You know what I mean? Like, if there's an issue, you should start at the root of that issue.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not the bottom level. So.
Right, and I mean, one of the things, it's a really good movie, and I know we've mentioned this before. It was one of our references. It's called The Last White Hope, America's War on Drugs. That's a really good documentary. It gives you a great timeline about the war on drugs. And actually, the war on drugs came out of Nixon's war on poverty. Okay? So the war on drugs basically took the forefront of how America had this severe problem with poverty, and people were out of work, they were unemployed, they were hungry. But then this whole idea came in about the war on drugs. So then the way the Politricks is in this is that each of these sort of campaigns, it gets a certain amount of money, which is trickled down to law enforcement agencies, to local and national government officials, who all become these mouthpieces in terms of who do we target to solve not only poverty but to solve drugs. So I'm going to give you this term, and I'm going to say this, and I hope it burns. The white man's burden. Okay, the idea of the white man's burden is that people of color have always been the burden of the ruling class of white people in the United States. So when we say a war on drugs, you're not thinking about just these clear faces of people that use drugs. You're thinking about a group of people, and generally those groups of people live in urban areas, and generally those people look like us, or they look like you.
Right.
So,
no doubt. Just like when Reagan used the term welfare queen.
There you go.
Right? That's not a nameless term, right? So that when you say that term, it conjures up an idea in your mind, preset by media and these other people, right? To what to think when they say that word. You conjure up, like God said, you conjure up idea of people who look like you or us, right? And then in the same time, you conjure up the counter or the opposite image of people who are affected by those so-called welfare queens, right? Which would be a Caucasian dude, someone who doesn't look like us, or possibly you, right? Who's being affected by this. So now, like the God said, you have this thing going on to where it's kind of like a white versus black thing, and it's the white man's burden. You said it right, God, where they have to kind of feel like it's these group of people who are affecting these other group of people.
Right, and that's where the double think comes in. We're going to make you think that this one group of people are your enemies, America, and then we're going to give you images of this group of people who are going to defeat the enemy, and then it creates this climate of mistrust.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
True indeed. Go
Okay.
ahead.
I was going to say, Kissinger, right? He was great at doing that, manipulating people into looking at one side versus the other, right? So, not to mention this is one of the only dudes who are still free, and he's being convicted of war crimes. We know for doing things like bombing the people in Cambodia and in Vietnam, right? All by using colorful wording, right? Double talk. You think one thing, he says a word that potentially means nothing, right? Like the war on drugs, means nothing. But because of programming and things, you pull up this identity with it, and that allowed people to go ahead and be cool with him bombing all these other places and him getting away with that.
And then, the thing is, since we're decoding language, try to think of as many phrases as you can that have been used over the last 10 years, or you can go further back than that, which has war on them.
Right.
The war on terror, the war on welfare, the war on poverty, the war on drugs. So you're never going to hear on a war on weak ass politicians. You're never going to hear that.
Right.
So
a war on banks that are stealing your money and bringing in the drugs to the neighborhood.
Exactly. War on Afghanistan, war on Iraq. I mean, there are so many different wars that have been created. So when people use that word in politics, you know, they're actually creating this conflict in your mind because they, again, want you to believe that they're establishing security not only domestically but abroad. True indeed. So why don't we go into a discussion about, hey man, Ronald Reagan. Pass it over to
You mean
I'm sorry.
Tricky Dick?
Oh, Tricky Dick. Richard Nixon. So one of the things that I know a couple of us had the opportunity to view is this interesting documentary which focuses on what is it, the body language.
Yes.
It's through the History Channel. So if you look up a search, and you know, I want to make sure I give this to y'all right and exact, so I'm going to cheat and read the exact reference you have here.
I am not a criminal.
Oh wait, I didn't even put it on here. Okay.
Push away from the podium.
Yeah. Well, if you guys let me know, I have to give them the title for that. But it's the exact title escapes me, but it is about body language and determining what truths that can be revealed through people's body language. That includes facial expressions, hand gestures, and everything else, and just in terms of how someone's standing in front of you. So the documentary goes into this scene where they're talking about or focusing on, you know, Richard Nixon and how he was defending himself against the Watergate scandal. And essentially the whole idea is that if you read about Watergate, theft was involved. And, you know, this was during a time where, you know, Nixon apparently was campaigning. And this eventually led to him, I guess, resigning his position so that he wouldn't be impeached. Okay, so you can hear him saying, like, I'm not a crook.
He was one of the people who was involved with him and Kissinger.
Okay.
Yeah, and there were like 3 or 4 other people, and some people got locked up respectively in their own countries. And again, Henry Kissinger, somehow because he's a statesman, that allowed him certain wiggle room in order to not, you know, to be locked up so far. But yeah, I mean, listen, but that's, you know, that's part of that whole story.
Yeah, thanks for adding on, because he was also implicated in the John F. Kennedy assassination. He was an agent at the time, as well as George Bush Sr. He was in some way within this group of friends. So, you know, when we talk about people
the
like...
guy who was the head of the CIA?
Really?
Who at time is not supposed to be able to become the president also?
Wow, really?
Wow.
You mean to tell me we're violating our own laws and we're politicians? Interesting. So in saying that, if you look at, you know, people like Richard Nixon, who went from the war on poverty and then later on began this thrust for like the war on drugs, which actually took, you know, it picked up more momentum when Reagan came into office, which was basically like a friend of his, you know, because they all sleep in the same bed with each other. I mean that figuratively.
Right.
Well,
so
do the knowledge to Alex Jones' Bohemian Grove thing. You know, we're talking about people sleeping where they sleep.
So here's the point. I know, Jerome, you did add on about this interesting conversation, Nixon, and before he says
I could play it. You want
to play it?
Yeah, I could play it.
Sure, indeed. Hey, this is media and the real thing in real time. One of the things I want to tell you about Nixon that you can analyze is you're trying to analyze how a liar speaks to people, especially since he was a politician. And that documentary put out by the History Channel, did we find out the title yet? Okay.
Yeah, currently finding.
They analyzed Richard Nixon when he was defending himself during a press conference about the Watergate scandal. And the specialists and the analysis, they break down every single thing, man. The way he was holding the podium, where he put his hands when certain questions were asked. I mean, you know, it's one of those shocking revelations, brother.
So, the one thing before we put that video I want to share with you guys is dealing with communication. We might have covered this on the show before, is that 93% of communication is nonverbal, right? So when you pay attention to this video the God's about to play, really pay attention to what he's not saying, right? And more importantly, pay attention to the things that he's doing. Right? God talked about how he pushes himself away from the podium with his hands behind.
I'm actually going to play the one of a conversation that was secretly videotaped without him knowing.
Okay.
Where he's basically voicing how he feels about original people.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to play that one. So, here we go.
Close, but there's this strange malignancy now that seems to creep among them. I don't know, radicalism. Very interesting thing. So few of those who engage in espionage are Negroes. Very lucky out there. As a matter of fact, very few of them become communists. But the Negroes, if you ever notice, there's damn few Negro spies. They're not intellectual enough, not smart enough. It may be. Not smart enough to be spies. The Jews, intellectual enough. The Jews are born spies. You know, some of them are just in it, up to their necks. Well, kind of basic deviousness that. Well, also an arrogance. An arrogance that says that's what makes us man. He puts himself above the law.
So there you have it. I think, you know, I must say, for some of us, it doesn't surprise us. However, when you're looking at things that basically are a piece of American history in terms of politicians and who were basically, at least Richard Nixon, as every other president, is considered the leader of the free world. When you hear them use the language of, you know, the common ignorant and redneck people out there, you know, you do really have to evaluate politics in America and actually why some of the decisions that are being made are being made. So that would be a really good idea about the mentality of some of our former politicians and quite possibly, and I know Jaquil's going to go in on this, our current politicians. So I wanted to go ahead and turn you over to the guy Jaquil because he's going to talk a little bit about this whole concept of doublethink and how we can decode and decipher the language of our current president, President Obama. So Jaquil's going to go in.
Peace. So,
Peace.
Yes, we can. That's just a funny one for you guys. If you're ever bored at home and you don't believe the words I'm about to tell you, you can do this for yourself if you got your own computer, a Windows computer, Mac computer, anything. You take a microphone and you say very plainly the words, yes, we can. And then you save that, and then on your audio thing, like if you have Windows, on your little sound recorder, you have a button that will allow you to play that backwards. And so when you play it backwards, it will say something very interesting for you. So I don't want to give that away, but yes, we can.
True indeed.
In any event, when you do the knowledge to our current president, there's a lot of things that we can look at as far as rhetoric or double talk that he said. And the show is not that long, so we won't cover all of them. We'll just cover a few. One thing off the back that jumps out is Guantanamo. So initially, when he was running, you'd hear him say things like Guantanamo is unconstitutional, and it's an illegal thing, and we shouldn't be doing those kind of things, and monitoring people's conversations and surveilling people and throwing them into detainment camps.
Even the name Guantanamo Bay. You think about that. It's not really in the name. You don't get what it actually is.
Right.
And it makes me think of like prisons, like Pelican Bay. Pelican Bay seems like a nice, friendly place. You would take the family.
Who doesn't want to go to Pelican?
Pelican Bay.
Right. So, that comes back to them using a certain language that softens up your mentality towards something.
What did George Carlin say? He called them euphemisms.
Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. But so, what he does when he becomes president is signs Guantanamo Bay to stay active, because that was his thing. I'm going to close it down. There's a video that I'll share later. He says, I'm going to close down Guantanamo, and I will not fund it. Conversely, and the guy who's interviewing him talks about there's many executive orders that you can do as president to change and remedy certain things, coming off the back of the all ever evil worst president Bush, right? Which everyone says Bush messed up everything. Although I did get a check in the mail from Bush. I haven't received a check from Obama, so I'm waiting. Obama gets in the president, and he uses this executive order to not shut down Guantanamo, but to give them more money and to keep funding going. Right? So there you have a bold-faced lie, literally, of what he said he was going to do and what actually happened.
5 years later.
Right.
True indeed. Now, when we talk about Guantanamo Bay, some of us are not exposed to, at least one type of phrase that has been used there. So you have to listen for this. You might see it in the papers. You might actually hear it being used by politicians or especially members of the military that are briefing, reporters at a press conference. So one thing that I picked up, and this was actually from one of our former vice presidents, Dick Cheney, he used the word enhanced interrogation to describe some of the things that are being done, not only to American soldiers that were captured by enemy forces, but also some of the things that were being done here in places like Guantanamo Bay, which is enhanced interrogation. Enhanced interrogation.
Sounds so much nicer than torture.
Doesn't it? And that's exactly what it is. Thank you. It's torture for information.
Right.
Okay, and that's some of the things that take place at Guantanamo Bay. Now, I know you were going to hit us with a couple of more examples of this whole idea of double think in terms of our current president.
Yeah, there's also, you've got Afghanistan. So initially he said, we need to, the first thing that I'm going to do, this is President Obama speaking, or soon to be President Obama, he said the first thing I would do is bring home the troops and end this war. Now, unless home is Afghanistan, and ending the war means starting another war, I would say that was a huge use of doublespeak and newspeak in the sense that, you say one thing, and in his campaign of saying that, they always allude to other things. And so like the guy was saying, you have to really pay attention to the words that they use when they talk about those kind of different things, like enhanced interrogation.
Right. Now, I think one of the things that comes out, because you did mention Henry Kissinger, we talked a little bit about Reagan. I think one of the things, and we can all use our common sense. One of the things that kind of stood out to me about some of Reagan's language. Again, was welfare queen. I mean, he was the one that was not necessarily criticized, but he was the one that was said to have used that. And now we're talking about dog whistle politics. So when politicians are using specific words, I guess to express an idea, there's a hidden meaning in those words. So like the guy I built on, well, you know, a welfare queen is always associated with what they consider minorities in the United States. You know, your black, your brown people, and anyone who would be considered original people, right? So in saying that, diving into Ronald Reagan, I think one of the main things that kind of comes out with a discussion about Ronald Reagan is that he couldn't remember anything. Okay, I'm pretty sure
after he got shot.
I think it was when he had to speak up on the Iran-Contra scandal.
Oh.
That's when his memory and his what they considered his see, I can't remember the word myself. That makes it so powerful. The idea of, well, they said dementia came in, but Alzheimer's was also something he was afflicted with. But, you know, his wife, Nancy Reagan, was the one who actually was spearheaded this whole movement of, you know, keeping kids off of drugs. Okay, so the fact that Ronald Reagan personified like this idea that it was okay to say that you didn't remember anything, when in actuality, you know, politically speaking, when you say that you don't remember something, it means that that is a crafty way of saying that, well, I'm not going to admit that I knew that.
Right.
So it's easier to say, I forgot. And if you've ever cheated on your girl, and she says, well, you told me you did A, B, and C, and you were over here. Now you're telling me something different. You're going to respond, I don't remember telling you that.
Yeah, that's right.
So there you go. Now,
one example of you know, that double say it again. What's it called? Double think. Pardon me. Is really, to me, when you look at like Obama and his whole dealings with Monsanto, then you look at Mrs. Obama and her whole dealings with making children healthier and the healthy nutrition movement and things of that nature.
Right.
To me, that's like the biggest, you know, double think, right?
Definitely, especially when they're not serving naturally organic foods. You know what I mean? And you know, she went as far as to have the you know, change the pyramid, the food pyramid, to a plate. So you know, you would think that someone who would take the steps to do those kind of things for so-called betterment wouldn't be doing something that's not better for you or better meant for you.
right. I mean, come on, man. You know, when you're sleeping next to your woman and you have two different causes, you know, it just doesn't add up.
Right.
You know, so that's a really good example, guys. Thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's another example of doublethink. On one hand, we're pitching genetically modified food production. On the other hand, we're pitching good health among our children in schools and in general in America. I wanted the guy to continue with the Obama thrust, and he was going to talk a little bit about Gaddafi and gun control. So how do we find doublethink in those particular topics?
Oh man, you know, I'll go with gun control first. You know, again, we go back to the pre-president, before he was actually a president, as he was running for the campaign. You know, he would say things like, "I don't want your guns, and I would never ask you for your guns." You know, I believe that all people should have their guns. Even we can add another one in there. You look at the whole same-sex marriage thing, right? Yeah, he was at first, and you watch him flip-flop throughout the campaign to when he actually gets in front of the what do they call it, the LBGT community. I hope I didn't screw that up.
That's right.
Right? He's all for it. Prior to that, he's like, well, I'm not really for it, but I think they should have some kind of rights that are afforded to them. And then another time he says, well, you know, yes, they should be able to do that. And another time he's like, well, no, not really, but some things is okay, but some things are not okay. And like I said, and at the end of it, when he's in front of the LBGT group, got it twice. You know, he's all for it in front of them, and they give him some loud cheer. But moving on to gun control, he's like, yeah, I don't want your guns. I would never ask you for your guns. And then him and Diane Frankenstein, Feinstein, you know, they're both requesting your guns, all the way down to your shotguns and pistols. You know, which if you guys remember North Hollywood, when they had the shootouts, the police were using pistols and shotguns. The other dudes were using automatic weapons, and you know who won that fight. So then, it's interesting to watch how these people say one thing, right, to try to encourage a different feeling, and then right on the other hand, go back. And then the ultimate offense to me personally was him and the whole Gaddafi thing. So, I mean, you know, how do you hang out with someone, shake their hand, invite them over, you go over there, you guys are building, say great things about the person, and then order to have him killed, which is what happened with Omar Gaddafi. Is Obama made friends with him and then had him killed. So watch who you make friends with.
True indeed. True indeed. And on that note, I think it's a good time to take a break, and we'll be back at you with the second segment. Peace.
Peace.
You fucked up, Ronnie.
Are we going to play that?
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jakil Knowledge Allah.
Peace to rule Allah.
And before we left, we were talking a little bit about the language that is being used by our politicians, and more importantly, the whole idea of doublethink and how we can decode not only the events related to what our politicians promise us they're going to do and what actually winds up panning out or happening in reality. So we wanted to go back briefly to talk a little bit about this idea of how politicians and military, and we don't separate military from law enforcement, they create something known as problem, response, solution. So this was something that one of our righteous brothers, Life Allah, the person who actually got us all together to do this show, this was something that he introduced to us. So of course, you know, I'm not former military, and I'm sure Life could give a way more and well-versed view about what problem, response, solution is. So I know we're all going to go into it to give our own take. But I just see the way it was explained to us that a problem, response, solution is that people, and you know, whoever they are in some dark corners of the United States or the world, they orchestrate an event, which in essence is a problem. It creates a problem. So they orchestrate this event with certain key players, or what we consider actors, except they're serious actors because they're doing real life stuff. Okay? So they're orchestrating a bombing. All right? As a result of that, what they'll do is they'll create this event, which in turn will create this sort of reaction.
Right.
All right? So the problem is created, and then it creates a certain reaction. So people that are subjected to that problem will respond in a certain way. As a result of that, later on, there's some dialogue, and boom, you have things such as martial law, a country that resembles more of a police state, more prisons being created. So, in essence, what I'm saying is that when a problem is created, at the end of that, some sort of solution is created to justify, hey, this is how we're going to solve this problem. And a lot of it looks like it's like an infringement on our own rights.
Yeah.
Okay, more police doing certain things. I mean, man, this guy right here alone, this brother too, have given you certain news reports about how more power is being given to the court system and law enforcement in taking your children from you. And they need very little justification.
Right.
So I want us all to kind of go in about, like, how do you all see problem, response, solution?
I mean, 9/11 comes to mind. You know, you think, and that, to me, this was if anyone was paying attention, this was really sloppy on the government's part. But 9/11 goes down. They say Al Qaeda was responsible. Bin Laden was the one who spearheaded it, right?
You mean the guy that NBC said was dead in 2002?
Right.
Oh, okay, just checking.
Right.
I mean, you know, Freddy Krueger comes back alive.
Right. Doesn't he?
Obama can. I mean, Osama can do it too.
You know, so yeah. So 9/11 goes down. You know, they basically see the response, and quite naturally, it's fear.
Right.
So when someone's fearful, you can do anything to them.
Right.
You know, so America is basically in a state of fear, and then the solution is to go to Iraq and declare war on Iraq.
Right.
Because that's where Osama is.
Right.
Right. Yeah. There you go.
So to me, it's like, you know, Americans were tired of war, and they just needed something to propel themselves into another war where Americans will be behind it.
Right.
So there you go.
Right. And then, you know, when you look at 9/11 a little bit closer, some of the buildings that went down that weren't hit by planes, magically, that fell in the same manner, that were not hit by planes. You know, things like tax information was lost. Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld both reported how they can't find a large sum of money that magically ended up missing. And there was no reports on where that money was, or that money even existed, because that went away and they didn't talk about that.
That was referring to all the money that was donated to the Red Cross. Is that what you're talking about? Oh wow, we're talking about two different things. The money disappeared.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I didn't know about the Red Cross. Tell me about that.
Man, I mean, apparently all this money was donated to the Red Cross, which was supposed to be given to the families of the people who died in the 9/11 bombing, and apparently they never got that money.
Really?
Oh yeah, man, it was a serious media spectacle, man.
Wow.
I don't know if they got it now, but I know they've had some serious shows about how they never got the money and it just kind of disappeared, all the donations.
Right.
I'm sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, just, So it's definitely interesting how these guys
smoking mirrors.
Exactly. It's so I remember watching this show on TV where they had this guy who was a thief or something like that, and he'd run around, not necessarily setting people up, but like someone would be outside at a cafe having some coffee and they'd have a briefcase. So he'd sit down at the table and join them for coffee. Conversely, he'd take their briefcase and all other kind of stuff up, and the person would be completely oblivious. And it's the whole smoke and mirrors thing. He's entertaining them with the conversation, which we talked about earlier. Words are only 7% of communication. So then you have to wonder what the F are people paying attention to.
That connection, the verbal, the non-verbal body language. But it's really just about making people feel comfortable with you.
Right.
And that's the great thing about Obama, is that he's very great at making people feel comfortable so much with him and trusting in him.
He speaks so well.
He speaks so well.
Yeah.
That's
It doesn't even matter what he's saying.
He speaks so well.
Right.
Black people. But when I think about that, I think of the episode of the Boondocks when who's the young one who's more like revolutionary, and he's having they're at like some dinner party with the mayor and a whole bunch of white people. He's telling them about Reagan and how he's the devil. He goes into like this deep build about Reagan. At the end of it, they all clap. Like, he speaks so well. He's so articulate. It's like, but what you listening to what I'm saying? Right. It's like that same kind of concept.
And again, if that's ever said in a political arena, when someone you're campaigning against and you say, he's so eloquent, that would be a really good example of dog whistle blowing. So basically, you're saying that you're the person you're campaigning against, typically speaking, comes from a group that does not speak very well.
Exactly.
And that's how they sink those things. I know another thing. Talk about dog whistle politics. One of the things that kind of destroyed Jesse Jackson from making it in politics in general was when he referred to one town that he happened to be speaking in or speaking of. He referred to it as Town. And in saying that, he had to come out later and apologize about that specific reference. So, I mean, there are so many out there, man. Anytime someone says something, you just kind of have to read in between the lines. When they make a reference to a specific group of people, that's dog whistle politics. They're basically making a racial remark. But remember, all the GOP, for example, they have their own little language that they use within their closed circles.
Right.
And by the way, GOP means, if I'm not mistaken, it means the grand old party. All right? The grand old party. It's spelled O-L-E. Ooh. Grand old party. That's what GOP means. Wow. A lot of people, someone asked me like, are you serious? Yes, because it's considered the oldest political party in the United States.
Wow.
Aside from the fascists. So, anyway, God.
No, but going back to the whole the Obama thing and how he's able to sway people. I mean, and like I've said before in the show, I remember getting into arguments with family members. Some may who have given birth to me. And I'm like, well, look what he did. And they're like, no, he didn't do that. I'm like, well, no, look at the facts. It's right here on the internet. Look it up. And there'd be an argument ensuing.
That comes back to today's degree, who is that mystery God. People tend to put people on a pedestal because they're not actually knowledge in that cipher. They're not dealing with reality. They're dealing with a certain feeling, or they're dealing with how something is perceived as opposed to the actual facts of the matter.
So now, when we look at Nixon versus Kennedy, interesting thing is they had a debate. And so this is when I want to say Nixon had just gotten out of the hospital. And, you know, I guess so the story goes, he was more of like a manly man. So he wasn't with putting on makeup and then that stuff. He was like, you know, no, I got my suit and I'm going to just go out there and kill it. Whereas Kennedy, you know, he was like, well, you know, I'm kind of good looking, but if you throw some makeup on me and I sit under this light and I kind of get this pose, I'm super sexy and everyone will be feeling me. I'm with it. So he put on the makeup, whereas Nixon was like, nah, you know, I'm going to just go out there with my, you know, wife beater and, and 40 and just keep it gangster. Right. So on the radio side of it, Nixon slaughtered Kennedy. But on the TV side, right, where you could see, everyone went for Kennedy versus Nixon. So what does that tell you? Is that the appearance, or, you know what I'm saying, everyone was paying attention more to what he looked like versus what he was really talking about, what he was really going to do. And that in turn is what won the thing for him. Just like Obama. Wow. People more pay attention to his perception versus what he really says and does.
That's a really great analogy. And I think we had a really hit show in America. It's called American Idol. You know, so, I mean, that's another thing. And we're all good at this because we're all into this. Whereas you look at the television shows that are being aired and the ones that are really popular, and then you should just kind of look at the political scheme of things, see what's going on in politics, and see if you can make some analogies, you know, because there's a lot of symbolism with American Idol and political campaigns. Nowadays, I don't know, I think it's always been that way. I mean, they say that in, you know, maybe like 60 years ago.
It was an actor. Yeah, you said it right. So, and I wasn't old enough to vote then, or else I definitely would have voted for that. So, but I'm just, you know, how do you do
that, man?
How do you do
Arnold
that?
Schwarzenegger was an actor, or is an actor, because they don't stop acting when they become politicians.
No, that dude got out of politics, made a movie, and now, remember, we talked about this, that dude wants to change the Constitution so that he could try to run for president.
There you go. And how did he wind up being governor of what would be considered what? California has like the 4th largest economy in the world, or at least it did during his time, since people are stealing money. That's the 10%, right? But for the most part, yeah, it's really good that you pointed that out, man.
He's an actor.
Wow. Yeah, we have actors, and we have people involved in making decisions.
They're all actors, though, when you think about it.
Well, so that's funny that you bring that up on that on the History Channel thing that the guy was talking about, which is called The Science of Body Language. They talk about Brad Pitt and Angelina, who was ultra hot in Hackers, in any event, and how most what's the other guy, Clooney. How these people have already been taught how to walk, how to look, how to smile, right? Those kind of things. Whereas a politician hasn't necessarily had that training. And one of the people that they used was Hillary Clinton. So you have Hillary Clinton back in the days when she was the president's wife, right? Not a senator, she was just the president's wife. Very different tone. She's kind of slunched a little bit over, softer tone. Right? He's like, oh, you know, I'm the president's wife. And then when you see her nowadays, she's upright and she's out there, and more forceful, more aggressive, going to go get people because now she's not the president's wife anymore. Now she's Hillary Clinton. I mean, she's got a freaking miniseries.
Wow, man.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, hey, the proof is in the pudding. You know, and I'm not speaking no news speak right there, brother. If it's in the pudding, it's there. You know, it's a large object in your mouth. So, and by the way, since we're talking about a statement that could be used, why don't you go ahead and check out, listen to Ice Cube's song. It's titled The Nigga Trap. That's a really good example of how the injustices in politics can be expressed.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's one of my favorite jams right there, straight up. So, in saying that, God, we wanted to get into this language that's spoken. It's spoken in the military, and if you can put in a search for something as simple as military terms. So I just kind of wanted to pass it around. How is the language of people in the military, your chiefs of staff, your soldiers or spokesmen for the military, how is that used to create this whole or keep in place the smoke and mirrors? I mean, just from everyone's observations and experiences. Like, what types of things have you all learned about the language spoken by the military that the general public generally is ignorant about, but it does convey certain messages about what's really going on?
One term that stands out to me is collateral damage.
Go ahead and break it down, guys.
It's like, to me, you kill innocent people, you kill innocent people. The military would say it's collateral damage, meaning that it's necessary to, I guess, the grand scheme of what they're trying to do. But you killed innocent people, you killed women and children. So instead of saying we killed 100 women and children, there were 100 casualties or 100 people died due to collateral damage. It sounds a lot nicer.
It's not easy to package.
You know what I mean? So, that's just one term.
Yeah, collateral damage, that's a huge one, too. Even when, and you definitely got to look at that, especially with the increase of drones, or the use of drones, and the bombings, right? So, whereas if you drop a drone and you get the person that you're actually trying to get, okay, cool, good job. You drop a bomb and you get the person you were trying to get and 20 other people around that guy, like you said, it sounds a lot better if you say, yeah, we got our target and there was some collateral damage. You'd be like, oh, well, collateral damage.
Right.
What the hell is that? Okay, cool, whatever. Whereas if you said, yeah, we got the person we were looking for, but, 20 people died, 5 of which were, mothers and 7 were kids, and, that sounds a whole lot worse. So, yeah. And I would say the other thing is the use of citizen versus military or enlisted man.
Wow, go ahead and break that down. What is the difference between citizen and enlisted?
We might have to share that topic. I mean, that's deep because citizen can go into many different things, especially when you look into like Black Law Dictionary and what it means to be a citizen. But initially, what I'll say, just to keep it simple, is that a citizen is someone who's under the laws and I guess like the laws of the land of the place that they live in. That's a citizen. So you're subjected to those places, subjected to those things. Whereas if you're enlisted, you're kind of enrolled in the program and outside of those things that a citizen would have to deal with. Right. So I would say that's the long and short of it.
Hey, now listen. Here's the main thing, because you did mention Black's Law Dictionary. But
you guys should get a copy of.
True indeed. I mean, they go anywhere from $40 to $80, and really good idea is look for it in PDF, and then when you get an opportunity, take this copy to the bookstore, see if it's right and exact, right? But this copy right here, which I found on PDF on the internet, it's the 4th edition of Black's Law Dictionary.
From what I hear, that's the one that you really want to be after.
The 4th edition?
Yeah, that's the 4th edition.
Well, I would definitely like to go into the bookstore and see if this sort of pans out, because again, there's a lot of stuff out there which is presented as this is it, but really it's not. So this is what I found online, 4th edition of Black's Law Dictionary. Again, don't take anything on face value, but I wanted to share a definition since the guy had mentioned citizen. According to this, it says citizen is a member of a free city or jural society, or Latin civitas. possessing all the rights and privileges which can be enjoyed by any person under its constitution and government. Wow. What are the rights and privileges? And subject to the corresponding duties.
Obamacare.
There you go.
Which you can't sign up for.
The definition continues. Citizens, that's in quotation marks, are members of community inspired to common goal who in associated relations submit themselves to rules of conduct for the promotion of general welfare and conservation of individual as well as collective rights. Down here, one of the headings says, the term appears to have been used in the Roman government to designate a person who had the freedom of the city and the right to exercise all political and civil privileges of the government.
So, I mean, I think what's interesting about that, and I like to pause there too, you know, is that they take away, if you become a citizen, they don't mention anything about your natural rights as a person. And so, you know, that's why I said, me personally, I need to look into this a little bit deeper. So, you know, it's kind of like you want to pick and choose when you want to be called a citizen and when you don't want to be called a citizen. Because being a citizen sometimes could get you put in a situation in which you're not in control of. Because you're giving up your natural sovereignty as a person. You're saying, I'm now a citizen of this person, which means that you now have to play by their rules. And so whatever rules they allowed you, or luxuries they allow you, they can also unallow you.
And that's a great analogy because, and Caucasians have told me this over the years, and you know, I mean, you should have saw the number of heads that are like, no. Yeah, I mean, this is what it is. Some people I talked to over the years who are, you know, really good in terms of sharing their experiences traveling. They said that, yeah, you know, when we travel, we whatever country we go to, we never tell people that we're American citizens. I was like, you don't? And they were like, no, you should never tell people that. I was like, really? Yes, we tell them we're from Canada or we tell them we're from somewhere else. But they say that it's a very dangerous situation in some countries if you tell people you're an American citizen. So it kind of ties into what you said. You know, are you an American citizen or are you something else? I mean, we here, we're universal. The planet is a black man. So when we say we're universal, we don't necessarily align ourselves with one corner of the planet Earth. Our natural birthright is the fact that we God. The black woman's birthright is that she's Earth. And the only time we come to understand that is if we come to the knowledge of ourselves. And that's kind of how I see that. I hope I'm not, you know, speaking for everyone, but I mean, that's how I see it. Words of War. Interesting search is put out there by Tom Shanker through the New York Times.
Hold on, what's his last name?
Shanker.
Wow. That sure is a military name. Right
Straight up. Tom Shanker. I'm like, you know, General Shanker. These are some of the words with them too. And again, we want you all, again, don't take anything on face value. This is something that I found that's put out there, which will kind of give us a really good idea about the language that's used in the military. And they actually were kind enough to use some quotes. So I'll just use one where it says sensitive site exploitation when that's used in the military. Sensitive site exploitation. Its acronym is SSE, and it says that when troops perform a sensitive site exploitation, it is the delicate process, I'm quoting, of examining suspected plants containing weapons of mass destruction.
Delicate process.
A delicate process. That's sensitive site exploitation. Another term, hot contact point. It says that a hot contact point is where our soldiers are getting shot at. And this is said by a British sergeant manning a checkpoint. I mean, man, they have a ton of these. Let's see.
So when you're not getting shot at, is it a code check?
Kind of interesting, huh? What is it called when the spot isn't hot? You know what I'm saying? We have something called, I'd rather go down because, I mean, there's a whole list of words. Something that I've heard. The idea is rapid dominance. So it says both terms were coined, excuse me, in this actually comes from another term, shock and awe. All right? So shock and awe is an offensive design, I'm quoting it here, to terrify the enemy into submission. So then it goes into this discussion. Both terms were coined by military strategist Harlan Ullman in a 1966 National Defense University book. Quote, the idea is to hit the Iraqi military and political structure at all the critical nodes and links with unbelievable intensity and unbelievable force and simultaneity. That's an interesting use of simultaneous. Simultaneity, he explained, quote, that induces paralysis, desperation, and a sense of extreme vulnerability. In essence, you change their will and they surrender.
Change their will.
Haven't we heard that before?
But think about that, the ramifications of seeing two of the most prominent buildings in America come down and what that does to the American people. It does exactly that, shock and awe.
No doubt.
Rapid dominance. That's the thing we need to remember. Go ahead.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just, I'm just kind of taking all that in. Yeah, that's deep. You hit it right on the head. I like that, guy. Definitely. It's shock and awe what happened. And when that happens, they talked about changing the will so that the people give up. Well, what are they giving up? Or what are you trying to get from those people, right? And we look at 9/11 and what took place and what did the people give up as a result of 9/11? Your freedoms, your
Patriot Acts, things of that nature.
Right. All those things were given up because of the shock and awe tactic, which is interesting. So, we know definitely that they use these tactics on us, but don't necessarily say that. Whereas the Pentagon just recently released a document saying that they are going to go full board on using, and I can't remember the exact word they said, but basically they're going to use manipulation to control the people. Propaganda. They had a way nicer word for it, like collateral damage. for manipulating the people and getting them to think and act a certain way. So I just think it's interesting as far as and these are all things that are happening to citizens of America. So
yeah,
it's deep.
It is deep.
I got a couple more terms.
Hit us, please.
That we're bringing you. All right? Can you believe we actually research this stuff? Yes, we do. Another term, kinetic. Quote, it says, the military uses the physics term for motion to describe actual combat. Major General Stanley A. McChrystal, Vice Director of Operations for the Joint Staff, used the word last week. This was to bring you up to speed. These were just some quotes taken from, our worldly news. Describing how wars are fought today with radio broadcasts and bombs. Quote, we have been sending messages in a number of ways to the regime that we believe the regime is through, he said. And we've been sending them both in information, operations, and kinetically. That was Major General Stanley A. McChrystal was quoted as saying. Kinetic targeting.
I'm gonna start telling people, you want me to get kinetic with you?
Unbelievable. Current preferred euphemism for dropping bombs. When aircraft drop leaflets on Iraq asking the military to surrender, and radio stations broadcast anti-Saddam rhetoric, we remember this, we live in these times, the generals describe it as soft targeting. Quote, when fighter jets and cruise missiles destroy targets on the ground, the military calls it kinetic targeting.
Kinetic targeting.
Kinetic targeting. True indeed, guys.
So are drone planes doing kinetic targeting?
Interesting. I think when they are armed. And I'm just being facetious there. Yes, of course they're armed. It's just a matter of the arms behind the controls that we have to be concerned about.
Right.
Considering all of these PTSDs coming back from overseas, fighting the U.S. war. Interesting.
That in itself, you know, post-traumatic war syndrome, instead of shell shock. You know, it's much nicer to hear post-traumatic stress syndrome or war syndrome than it is to hear shell shock. You know what I mean? It softens that up. One thing I was thinking about, do y'all remember the terror bar that was in place?
Yes.
You know, ensuing after you know, the buildings being taken down. You know, even back then, before I had a knowledge of myself, I was like, this is really suspect. You know, like one day it's green, the next day it's red. Like, how did they determine the terrorism level?
How did that, get determined?
Because it's terrorism because you don't really know when it's going to happen, right?
Man, exactly.
You know, or where it's going to happen, or but for them to have that much, information to determine the level, they should know a little bit more about when it's going to happen.
Well, here's the thing. We also talked about problem response and solution, right? So the problem is the high terror threat. The response is panic and fear. The hell is the solution?
The solution is, that's why I think, honestly, it was like, okay, we're in Iraq, and people are seeing us bomb the hell out of Iraq every day. So let's keep these people in the state of fear and make this fear last as long as possible. So let's keep this terrorism bar there to reinstate that fear that initially got us to go over there in the first place. And then think about it, anytime something dealing with terror goes down, they show those towers on fire. The media will present those towers. So you see that and instantly go back into that state of fear.
Right. Or use words to link you to that.
Right.
And conjure up those ideas.
And I like the fact that you have reintroduced that contradiction there that both of you are talking about. A high terror alert. So I'm going to tell you right now, in the hood, a high terror alert is when someone is shooting. Straight up.
Or when you're like, yo, we just blasted on the enemy, and those dudes are right around the corner, and they got guns, and they're coming right around to our corner to shoot us up. Be on some high terror alert.
Exactly.
That's why I said, I was like, okay, so that's cool. We know that there's a high terror alert, but we asked the citizens, what the hell are we supposed to do? Just wait for the aftermath? Because there is no solution presented. They're just like, yeah, this is what's happening. So you're like, okay, well, so again, that's that double speak, right? Where they're like, okay, you should be afraid because they could blow up another building. But then you're like, okay, so we're on this high alert, but we don't know where it's going to happen, when it's going to happen.
That keeps you in a state of fear.
Right, or what we're supposed to do when it does happen. There's absolutely no plan. So it's not like, okay, if they blow up the Crenshaw Mall, everyone go to this place. Or for the people who have training, go grab your guns and go do this. Or there's none of that. There's just some stuff may blow up.
Right.
Don't be afraid.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because when we were researching this show, that question came up in my mind too. Is like, but really, what happened to that alert system? So I went ahead and looked, and I would just refer all of our listeners to the National Terrorism Advisory System. You can find this at www.d-as-in-dog-hs.gov /topic/NTAS. And Homeland Security's response to changing that system of alerting us of potential terrorist threats goes back to exactly what you said. The reason why they stopped doing that was because they didn't really know the degree of the terrorist threat. You know what I mean?
But it's not like, okay, it's not like they're saying you're on high terror. If it happens in your city, this is what you should be doing. It was just there.
Right. I mean, where's FEMA, right?
You know?
We're in FEMA Region 9. Where was our FEMA response people saying, hey, in case of an emergency, FEMA is here to help you because that's where your money's going. To do da 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 da. Yeah, there was nothing in place.
So if you want to see, like, this is the system you can all log into if you want to know about the terror alert. And you know, it has National Advisory Terror System, and it kind of tells you, it gives you like, at the bottom of the page it says, National Terrorism Advisory System. You can look down at the bottom, and it says current alerts. There are no current alerts. Expired alerts. There are no expired alerts. Your tax dollars at work through Homeland Security. Don't you feel safe?
I do. The same people who just bought billions dollars worth of ammo, spent $50 million on pepper spray launchers, and have militarized vehicles. I feel safer already just talking about it.
Man. So, you know, I think this would be a really good time for us to take a break. And when we come back, we'll get into the last segment of the show. Peace.
Peace.
Man, this is sick, bro.
There's no expired alerts. Really? Okay, so
Trouble child. Oh, he sounds la la la. Oh child, 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 oh child. Trouble child, yeah. Trouble child. Oh, he sounds la la. Oh child, oh
Peace. Welcome back to the Knowledge Yourself radio show. My name is Teray Allah.
Peace. Jafil Knowledge Allah.
Peace, Jarul Allah.
And before we left, we talked a little bit about the language that's commonly used, or at least not commonly understood by some of our military, and also what these terms mean once we are able to decode them as they're used to explain what's really going on in any type of situation where the military is involved. So this segment is titled The Media, the Glue That Holds It All Together. So in this mix, we also have to talk a little bit about the language that's used by law enforcement and what that means. And I just kind of want to take it back to what Jakil had emphasized early on in the show, the fact that most of our language is communicated through our body. So according to that History Channel joint, right? 93% of what's communicated between people is all within body language, and the remaining 7% is through language. So some of the things that just I've been exposed to just dealing with law enforcement is
You have to do with law enforcement?
can you believe that?
A black man in America having to deal with
Really?
law enforcement?
Yeah, really? It's not just Henry Louis Gates Jr.? So, in saying that, I'll give you a really interesting story. Well, I have more than one story. That's a damn shame. You got more than one story encountering law enforcement. So, when I was near Locke High School in the Southeast Division,
Team of Region 9.
yes, I was pulled over due to, and this is my bad, but hey, justice is your reward or your penalty. So I was just going to go straight up to a gas station called Valero, right around the corner from Locke High School, and en route, I was stopped right next to a school called Gompers, and I was pulled over because I'm setting the stage. And I happen to have, I was pulled over, and when I looked in my side view and my rear view mirror, which are always right and exact because I'm a safe driver, and the police officer got out of his car, and one of the things that I noticed when he came to the side of my car is he was hunched down and he had his gun, or had his hand on his gun. Almost said that the wrong way. He had his hand on his gun, which meant that he quite possibly had in mind that I might have to shoot the passenger. Now, he went over, and of course they keep their body within a certain proximity of the car when they're talking to you, and his first request was, put your hands on the steering wheel. So of course I put my hands on the steering wheel. Mind you, we hadn't even had a conversation yet. Right. I'm viewing all of this before he even gets to my side of the window, and he's still holding on to his gun. Two things you need to be aware of, those of you who are listening to this. I had a baby chair in my car. Okay? I also had a sign that said, baby on board. So if you're a law enforcement agent and you're pulling over someone and you notice a baby seat's in the car, and you also notice a baby on board sign.
Terrorist.
You should terrorist. I mean, you just get in mind that I might have to shoot this guy.
He's got a baby on board.
Exactly. Why would you approach the car? Of course, they're taught different ways in the police department. I understand Watts is a very dangerous area. But the thing I did not appreciate was the fact that after he had already seen that, first of all, there was a baby chair in the car, and it was just me in the car, he still continued to have this conversation with me with his hand on his holster.
Not to mention, before he even gets out of his car, he probably already checked in the computer at your record, and probably saw that you have a history where you're not violent or anything to that nature. No history at all as it relates to a criminal background. So he should already know, okay, this is the type of person I'm dealing with.
Right.
But he's still, based on who you are gets out with his hand on the gun. It says a lot.
Right. So that was the first story. I might save the other story though. But the whole point is this: the language that the police officers use. One of the things, if it's going to be a verbal sort of dialogue or any type of dialogue between you and a police officer, some of the things that I think kind of eases the situation, because police officers are usually on edge. Mm-hmm. All right, let's they're some of the most shell-shocked soldiers on the planet, because they are soldiers. Isn't that right? Can't you see that badge with their name on it? And you can see they have a license to carry a gun. And they also wear bulletproof vests. That's a soldier. So when we're saying that, the way we should speak is you want to refer to them as sir. Because right there, that sort of takes off at least one layer of fear that they have for you, being a black man. All right? And when you respond, it's always good to look them in their eyes. When they tell you can take your hands off of the steering wheel, or they ask you to get something, here's a really interesting thing. Sorry, y'all, but I have to quote him. Richard Pryor.
Yeah.
he gave some really good advice when you encountered the police, where he said, "I am putting my hand into my pocket."
Word.
Right? Basically to inform you that, what was it? He said, "I am reaching my hand into my pocket to get my license." I think because he's done a couple of different bits. It's been a while since I listened to old Richard Pryor. But at the end of that joke, he said, "Because I don't want to be some MF accident." Right? Richard Pryor also said, "How do you accidentally shoot a nigga 30 times?" Right? He's also said that too.
Right. The gun just kept firing, and somehow more bullets got up in the chamber and cocked back and just kept firing. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So how you speak to the police officers, because I'm going to have these guys add on with their experience. The language that you use communicates a lot of things to them. Sir, yes, sir. When they ask you for your license, at least in that situation, I said, "My license is in my glove compartment." So you need to communicate with the police officer what the hell you're doing.
Move slow as hell, too.
Move slow as hell. And if you can do it, keep one hand here, or at least in sight, because he did tell you to put your hand on the steering wheel. That's what I do. When you say, yeah, you can take your hands off the steering wheel, you still have a gun. So I'll keep my hand on the steering wheel and I'll lean over and say, I may have to dig into my glove compartment for a minute because it's in an envelope.
It's a damn shame.
And I'll just pull it out, and I might even say, it's in there, because I don't want to be fiddling around.
Yeah. Which is, so it's interesting that you mentioned that. On that body language, assigned to body language, there's a part where a police officer, if you can still call all of them that, talks about what happens, or some of the body language cues that he looks for when he's pulling over a potential suspect. Although I would say you are a suspect and potentially guilty, or not potentially, you are guilty until you somehow magically prove yourself to be innocent. In any event, he says, we look for things like people looking in the movie mirror all the time, or people being fidgety. Which, what if the dude's just antsy because he's got someplace to go, and he's like, damn, now I got this traffic stop.
He's a black man and got pulled over by the police.
You don't even need anything special. You just need to be a black man.
But I mean black, by black I mean black and brown.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I wanted to hear some other tales. If we have them. So about the language we use with law enforcement and how we interpret and decode their language.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm just, again, I've got maybe more than one story when I had an encounter with police outside of DARE class when I was in like the 5th grade. One time me and my friend, 2 black guys, driving in a Nissan Sentra, so it's not a gangster car, And, it's definitely not a drug dealer car. It's just a normal beat around putt-putt car. Mm-hmm. And this cop had been following us for a good 2 or 3 blocks. Mm-hmm. And so me and my friend both knew it. We were like, all right, dude, we're about to get pulled over. And, at this point in my life, I was actually a teenager. So I think I was involved in this church Bible study thing. And so we get pulled over, and we know the drill. So he's got his hands out the window. I've got my hands out the window. The officer rolls up and they did the whole split. So one's on one side, one's on the other side. Mm-hmm. They kind of backed away with the hands on the gun. And so they're kind of shocked. So the first question, not license registration, was, why are your hands out the window? Weren't you going to ask us to put our hands out the window, sir? Keyword, sir, right? Well, yes, I was. Okay. Didn't say anything else. Then he goes, so do you guys have any guns or contrabands in the car? Mm. No, sir. All I do is I have my Bible, which has my backpack and has a Bible in it. Mm. And he goes, huh. And he goes, well, he got my friend's license and registration. He comes back. He goes, well, the reason we pulled you over is because you had a tassel hanging in your car, and you weren't supposed to have a tassel hanging in your car because it could block your vision. So we'll go ahead and let you go. You guys have a great day. Didn't ask us to take down the tassel that was blocking the vision. Mm-hmm. Didn't do any of that stuff. So you gotta. the wording that they use is it's like, so they ask us these questions as if we're not supposed to know how to act or respond to police officers.
Yeah, they want to see if you give them pushback.
Right.
As soon as you do it, it's a wrap.
Right, you know right. I mean? Exactly. They're asking you phrases that, for one, the reason why you're pulling me over is not because you have a tassel or anything. It's because there's 2 black dudes in the car. Mm-hmm. And it's like 8 o'clock at night. That's why you're pulling us over. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like you said, when they ask you some of those questions, it's like they're waiting to see if you're going to give them I'm an angry black man response. Right. Mm-hmm. Or if you're going to be calm and collective and be cool. Yeah. So I think that's one of the words where you can use, or you can see the language and coding. Because I've been pulled over with white people in the car, and it was a totally different scenario. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely it's in the language, and like the guy was saying, it's the body language, right? Mm. So you roll up on the dude, and my friend is a math major, completely square dude. Everyone's got their okay, I stole something from the liquor store, or I wasn't in a gang, but I roll with gangs, and da. This dude is square, right? And so I'm sure they pulled up his record, and they saw that this dude was square, and they still kind of, they approach hands on the gun, spread out as if something was going to happen. Mm-hmm. So you definitely watch the body language. It's the things that they didn't say that really made me nervous. It's not the fact that they were asking what's in the car or da-da-da-da, right? It's, why are you angled at a way that you can easily draw your gun and shoot me, right, before I had a chance to even explain to you that I'm not reaching for a gun? Right? So, it's those things.
That's wow. Yeah, man. Right over here, like probably 2 minutes from my house. So this area that I live in, the service is terrible. So, I have Sprint. So basically, I was talking to my cousin on the phone, and I knew the closer I got to where I lived, I was going to lose service. So I pulled over in the neighborhood to talk on the phone. So I guess someone in the neighborhood called the police. Now, mind you, this was 11 o'clock a.m., 12 o'clock, on a Sunday.
On a Sunday?
Right. Sun out, I'm just sitting in my car talking on the phone.
In your lowrider with the loud rap music?
Right. Right. With my shotty hanging out the window.
Right. No. And your button 40 in your head?
Right. Okay. So, I pulled over. I'm just talking on the phone. So, police officer rolls up, is actually he comes to the car, hand on the gun. And, he was a little bit cooler than... Now, 2 police officers came while I was there. Wow. But the first one, he was a little bit cooler. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm talking to my cousin. He's like, oh, it's because of the service, right? The service around there, you pulled up. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then he left. And I was like, wow. That was it.
Right.
You know? So I was good. Now
No anal probes. Like
You know what I mean?
Texas, one glove, two officers.
Then the next dude rolls up, and before his car is even really stopped, he kicks the door open and comes rushing to the car with his hand on the gun.
Wow.
And I'm like, shit, I'm about to get shot.
Right. Right.
And he's like, what are you doing over here? I'm like, I live on the next street over. I'm just on the phone because I lose service over there. He's like, oh, okay. And I was like, another cop just came. You got like I was.
Didn't you see that in the report?
Yeah, I was like, you know what I mean?
Don't you guys talk to each other?
Yeah, right. He's like, oh, they did? Oh, okay. And then he left.
I'm a liar. Oh, okay.
It's like, damn.
So you knew they came.
Yeah. So I think for me it was the current that I came at them in.
Right.
It wasn't like I'm just right here on the phone. You know, I wasn't like being aggressive. I was just like, I just told them straight up, this is what I'm doing.
Right.
You know, I'm nothing to hide.
Right.
You know, I think the first cop took my license and registration. You know, but that was it. So, but that's just one instance. There was another instance where I was driving with my headset on, which we're supposed to be when we're on the phone on a headset.
Yeah.
Right.
I got pulled over for wearing a headset while driving, and
because that makes sense.
right, cop got out with his hand on the gun.
Wow.
He was real shaky, and then he got my license registration, looked at my record, came back a completely different person.
See, I mean, part of it is a lot of these cops, which LA was like one of the pioneers in, are ex-military guys, right? So you can pretend like you're going to attempt to retrain this person, but the reality is when you join the military, they take you into the infantry. Keyword in that is infant. So they bring you back to like a baby state and raise you up from there. What do we know about kids who... Hell, what does the Bible say about raising kids in a certain way, right? If you raise them, they will not stray away from the things that you taught them. So now you've got this dude who was taught to handle people. Military don't police people. You guys ever seen the Denzel Washington movie, The Siege?
Yes.
Right? When he talks about... it was a Bruce Willis. He was like, yo, man, I'll be honest with you. Like, military don't police people. That's not our job. That's not how we respond with people. So you've got this dude who has a certain kind of training to respond to a certain situation, but then you're going to send him to interact with normal people who aren't in that same kind of situation. That's kind of so that's a recipe for destruction within itself. Then not to mention, and that definitely, it's not every cop. I know some cool cops. Or policemen for that matter. Then you've got agencies, law enforcement agencies, who are also now hiring people who are not as intelligent. Right? So, it's like, you were supposed to get 100 on this test, but you got 65. Yeah, that's cool.
We're going to let you in.
We'll let you in anyway.
Not to mention a lot of the protocols that these, chiefs of police set are to specifically target certain groups.
I mean, let's look at stop and frisk in New York, right?
Right.
Very simple, where you have black and brown people being arrested or searched at a far higher rate than you have Caucasian people or so-called white people being frisked at.
True indeed. Great input in terms of our own stories, and the sad thing is we have probably a ton more stories, man.
Oh, yeah.
So I know we wanted to throw into the cipher the idea of how does the media hold this whole language together that's used by law enforcement, the military, and politicians. So I wanted Drew to kind of go in and kick off that discussion. So, how does media demonize our people in America and specifically around the world? Like, what would be some of the ways they do it?
Well, specific to the media really is the bridge between the people and the governing bodies, whether it's the military, whether it's the government itself, whether it's law enforcement. So anything that goes on with the governing body, the media is how we get it. So it's all about spinning it a certain way to keep us in a certain mind state as it relates to whatever governing body is. So they basically they deflect our opinion of an enemy from away from who the true enemy is toward another enemy.
Right.
Like, there always has to be an enemy. So I think they understand that based on the way we've been raised since we were children, it's like the bad guys and good guys. So we keep that mind state. So they present us with a bad guy, and then we jump on it. You know what I mean? So any Arab right now, it's slowly changing back to the black man, but for a time it was any Arab.
Right.
They were looked at as the bad guy.
Right. Right. For sure.
So
even people who weren't necessarily, like people who
weren't even Arab.
Right. Right. Who just have that kind of features to them.
With the head wrap.
Right.
Anyone wearing their head wrap could be from not even an Arab country. They get put in that box. So that's a deep level of ignorance on Americans' part, and they keep us ignorant. So it's on us.
There's an interesting thing that we came across. It's something called Sapphire. Sapphire's Political Dictionary, and Sapphire was he was a gentleman who wrote speeches for, of all people, Richard Nixon. But he's brought out a dictionary over the years which gives you a list. I mean, it's a dictionary for political terms and terminology, which helps us further decode this language that's being used by, variety of agencies, man. Because, give you an example. The word campaign is used by the military, and it's also used by politicians. And it denotes pretty much the same thing. You're trying to do something to a large number of people. So a military campaign, you're trying to kill a whole bunch of people or get them to submit. And in a political campain, you're trying to kill a whole bunch of people. Thank you. You're trying to kill a whole bunch of people with your politics.
Get them to submit.
Either way it goes. But he said that one of the things is that he said we should never say the media is, and he said that we should say the media are. So he was just really trying to make it clear that whatever we hear in the news depends upon that particular agency and which group of people in the media they want to listen to. Or whose information they want to publicize. So he said it's like there's so many different groups of people that could be referred to as the media. So it's always interesting if we could do like way more research in terms of figuring out, well, who were the group of people in the media that were successful at pitching this negative image of the Arab. You know what I mean? This is kind of interesting, but there's a book called Sapphire's Political Dictionary. Okay. And also you can look at a couple of videos where he's talking about, his political dictionary. He talks about dog whistleblowing politics. So kind of interesting.
Yeah. As far as the news and media, one thing that came out recently is that Diane Not So Feinstein. I'm gonna leave her alone before she has her bodyguard shoot me, because apparently those are the only people who can have guns, is her bodyguards and not anyone else. On another note, she's saying that I'm working my Neo technique too, stopping bullets. So, she's saying that you are not. Let me step back a little bit. So, with the recent introduction of technology, right, cell phones, everyone basically is their own news reporter, right? So you got Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Google Hangouts and all these places where you can share news immediately with people right on the scene, right? So now, instead of having to wait till 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock news to get home, people are more and more being encouraged to be their own news source or newsman or newswoman. So Dianne Feinstein comes along and she says, that is illegal unless you are sanctioned by the government. Sanctioned by the government to be a journalist. So now you are no longer, as an individual who is there on the scene, who sees something happens, and who records that happening, you are no longer a source of information because you are not confirmed by the government to speak as a journalist.
Wow, so that means that Rodney King video that was filmed by someone who witnessed that must not have been admissible in court at all during that time.
Maybe that's why they got off.
Maybe that's why they got off, because he wasn't a licensed journalist with a degree in journalism.
Yeah, he didn't really hold that camera steady enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that, God. You know, I mean, again, this show is always enlightening when I do this with my brothers, man. I know that at this point in time, we do want to hit you with the read and the view and the do. So as far as the read, check out Sapphire's Political Dictionary. You're not going to find that anywhere else but online through Barnes & Noble. That would be one source, and you can look other places. But as far as walking into a Barnes & Noble, man, and getting that, they don't have them. You got to get them online. Black's Dictionary, the handbook, the one you can carry in your pocket, is about $40, and it's upwards from $40 to $80. I'm sure you can find it cheaper somewhere else. Okay. I need to go back into this because I just kind of stopped, but there are a couple of publications you should look into, good or bad. Check out The Economist. Pick that magazine up, and also there was a magazine I used to get. It's called The Nation, which is a little bit more progressive in terms of their journalism. Okay. And as far as The View, you know, who's going to do The View?
I'll do The View. We'll have a documentary we want to watch called The Network. And I believe you can...
It's a movie.
Oh, pardon me, a movie. And can you watch that online?
Good question, man. It's an old piece. I heard it's a really good example of the language that we're talking about. We have to decode.
Okay, indeed. If we can find it online, we'll post it for you. But you know, do your homework. Maybe post it for us.
The do. Simple, man. Stop waiting for a mystery government, person, God to come save you from your current state of existence. I think the point of the show is to not think that the government has your best interest at heart, because these people in government never really existed at the level that you existed in. They don't come from your neighborhoods. They don't come from the thing, or they've never really experienced the things that you experience on a daily basis.
You mean like when Ronald, was it Bush, when he walked into a liquor store, in a grocery store, and flipped out over the scanners because he's never seen the scanner machine? You mean like that kind of unrelatability? They've never...
Right, exactly. So you can't expect them to have your best interests at heart. So you have to look at yourself, look at your cipher, knowledge your cipher, and do what's best not only for you but for your family and your community. You know,
and make sure you remember that, you know, the people that make up law enforcement, the military, and government, they're people. They're just not acting within accordance to people that know who they are in terms of people and their nature and things of that nature. Maybe some of them do know. I don't know.
I want to add on to the do though.
Definitely.
You know, reduce the amount of time that you guys are spending watching television or news, and you know, make your own news. I'm sure in this day and age, you all
isn't that illegal unless it's sanctioned?
Right. Yeah. So don't make your own news.
Oh, okay.
Take pictures of things that might be happening around your area.
Yeah. Oh man. Yo, as always, it's a pleasure to do this show with my brothers, the God Jakil Allah and the God Jarul Allah. We hope you all come and tune in next week. You can always check out our archive shows through our YouTube channel, which is
YouTube channel is KOS.
So you pass it around?
Yeah.
Okay. YouTube.com/KOS, the number 9 radio.
And we also have our Facebook page and our Twitter page. You might want to tackle that.
I'm gonna keep it simple. Go to knowledge of self radio.weebly.com and you will find all that you need.
Indeed. I also wanted to wish a happy Veterans Day to, you know, for example, my father. He was a veteran. just following orders, y'all. That's just how it goes. But I do want to thank the genuine soldiers who actually have human compassion in their hearts. And they question these orders, man, coming from some of these suicidal necktie and suit sort of politicians.
Indeed.
Anyone else want to?
Yeah, no, I mean, along that note, peace to all the people that recently lost their job because they refused to turn against the American people and they wanted to uphold the Constitution and was let go by Mr. President Obama. So peace to y'all for doing your job. I know there's other military and local police, who are not corrupt and who are definitely, like the guy was saying, are just good people and actually want to do the job in a righteous way. So, peace to all those people.
True indeed. All right, so all of you have a good evening. Have a good Monday off if you're off.
Not I.
Oh, man, really? We'll say peace until the next time.
Indeed. Now it's a Self Radio. You don't have to go to college to do the knowledge.
Thank you very much. You finally said it. Peace.
Peace.
There you go, man. You gotta